session. I'm Emily, and this is Sophia. I would consider myself a transdisciplinary scholar. I'm currently doing my PhD in criminology, and I'm a big fan of the horror genre.
My name is Sophia. I run this channel, and I am a film major and English minor. I specialized in horror and extreme cinema.
Welcome. We're here, and we are going to jump into and dissect as many horror movies as you guys want to hear about. So I guess we're going to start off on our first movie. Our first movie is The Cabin in the Woods. Why did we pick this movie?
Spooky! Well, we wanted to talk about a film that everyone probably knows. There's a lot about this film that kind of feeds into other films in the genre. There's different tropes, there's different ideas, and we're going to talk about those today.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen the film, these are going to be quite a bit of spoilers for it. If you want to pause here, go watch the film, come back. Cool. If not, then yeah. So basically, there's kind of two subplots that go on for majority of the film. There's the stuff that's going upstairs and the stuff that's happening downstairs. What we know is there's office employees and that they're preparing for a project. At the same time, there's university students, so there's Dana, Jules, Kurt, Marty, Holden, and they're all heading to Kurt's cousin's country home for a weekend vacation to get off the grid. So these teenagers think that they're going about this by themselves, but actually those office employees are monitoring their movements on cameras and through surveillance. So they eventually arrive to the abandoned cabin. There's some things that happen that are kind of meant to be unsettling, so like the one-way mirror. At this time, the office is putting together a betting pool. This is where kind of the climax happens. The cellar door opens and they all go down to investigate, and there's different items in the basement. So against the wishes of Marty, Dana reads the Latin in the book and summons the Buckner zombie redneck torture family. So during this, everyone's like, oh, that's a problem, you know, we just summoned something, and what are we gonna do? Well, Jules and Kurt go outside to have sex in the woods. Well, Marty questions everyone's behavior, and Dana and Holden talk and kiss on the couch. You know, when you're in danger, go outside and have sex. Perfect. So the office men are trying to watch this sex scene. They're adding pheromone mists, they're adjusting the lights and the heat. There's customers watching, as they allude to. So the blood that is spilt from this kill is filtered through the office's system and then is offered in prayer for eternal slumber. Dana is attacked on the dock, but she is saved by Marty, who we thought was killed, but he's not. He's still alive. And they go down to the grave where the Buckner redneck family killer, whatever we're going to call them, I guess spawned out of is the best way to put it. And they're able to find out that this is actually like an elevator. As the elevator's traveling, they go by other boxes holding monsters and nightmares. And this is my favorite part of the movie. I don't know about you, but like just seeing all the different things, like as they're going by, they're going down, they're like traveling across, and they're coming up to different boxes, and there's like werewolves, ghosts, there's the ballerina with the teeth, there's the Pinhead-esque character, there's Tarantula.
The mermaid man that kills the director.
Oh yeah.
Is like, I read that was like peaks, and like people stood up and clapped in the cinema when they saw him. I was like, yeah,
that's like a good full circle moment right there. Yeah, exactly. But like they pan out and you're just seeing all these boxes, and they're in the middle, right? Because they're like just suffered this crazy attack, and there's all these boxes of different monsters, which I mean, really cool, really interesting.
There's some video game tie-in monsters in there as well if you look really close.
Oh, okay.
Really interesting.
I guess Dana, while she's in the box, comes to the conclusion that they chose their own death. When the elevator doors open, Marty and Dana leave, and they go and they lock themselves in the control booth because there's all these SWAT team that are coming after them. And while they're in the control booth, they activate all the elevator doors to open at once. Again, such a cool scene because it's just all these elevator doors opening and these monsters coming out at this like ever coming like list of military professionals, and they're just being torn apart by all these different monsters.
It is a bloodbath. I will never forget the first time I watched this movie, and I think it's the elevator doors open when the second team of SWAT people come in, and like that imagery alone of just blood. Like, I just, in my head, I can picture it perfectly. Blood everywhere.
Yeah.
That stays with you.
So headquarters are breached. There is killing left, right, and center. They're going after the employees. So Dana and Marty enter the sacrifice chamber, and this is where they come across Sigourney Weaver.
Yes!
Wow.
We love
Surprise.
a final girl queen in this house.
Right? She kind of explains that they need to make sacrifices in order to continue mankind. While they're there, Dana is attacked by a werewolf, and then the Sigourney Weaver character is killed by one of the Buckner children. And then Marty and Dana end up surviving, but at the very end, we know that the gods are angry. Is that a pretty good overview, or do you want to add anything?
No, I would not like to add anything. That was already way too long. Let's get into some theories. The whole point of this little show is to kind of look at these shows deeper in different historical lenses, cultural lenses, film lenses, psychology lenses, and criminology lenses, and kind of read in these movies a little bit more than surface level. So we both kind of have our own theories, I think. We're probably going to talk about some different things, but also some overlapping tropes that you may see in this film. Let's see if we've taken the same lenses. I have looked at this culturally, more or less, I would say.
Yeah, that's great.
Which approach did you kind of go for?
I have a couple different approaches, but a lot of them also kind of goes around the societal, cultural, or even like personal individual identity.
So something really interesting about this, and I even like wrote down fun facts for later. So this film, written by Goddard and Whedon, was actually supposed to start off as commentary to like torture porn films that were being made during this time. But then as the film industry was like evolving, and as they decided to write the script, things kind of changed, and it ended up into this big meta thing, and they said that it was like a love letter for horror, but they also wrote it for people that absolutely despise horror and its tropes to like make a satire out of it. Around this time, and I think we can both even speak to this as well, as the film came out, a lot of audiences by now are very desensitized to just the horror genre, really. Blood, gore, torture, like we've kind of seen it on our screens now a lot, and it doesn't really faze us anymore. This whole film, in its form and content, is kind of a critique of that. Imprisoned underneath this earth, you get these ancient gods. These ancient gods are supposed to actually be a metaphor for us, the audience. Then the only way to keep them at bay is these ritual sacrifices, which are films, really. And basic things aren't cutting it anymore. Movies need to be better, they need to be gorier, they need to be bigger. And then the gods, the audience, have grown bored, and they want more blood and intense spectacle. That's where the secret underground operations come in, as they represent the filmmakers. And it's the filmmakers' job to make these spectacles elaborate and crazy so that when the blood is spilt to the audiences, it appeases us in a way. To summarize, it's a metaphor for humanity as viewed from a filmmaker's point of view in the horror genre.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that, and I even made up some notes too about the desensitization, because you're right? Because the movie kind of puts the audience in this weird place of like, you're rooting for these kids, right? You're rooting for them to survive, like Dana's the final girl, right? And we can get into archetypes as well with that, but at the same time, you're like also kind of rooting for the people at the office building, because you're like, this is their job, like they need to, come up with some sort of like product, or and the product in this case is obviously making a good movie, a good horror movie. That's why they're pumping in the pheromones, because you need to have that obligatory sex scene. That's why they're pumping in these pheromones that change these people's perceptions. And the one part that I thought was really interesting, so Kurt in the movie is supposed to be the jock character, right?
Yeah.
But he's actually a sociology major.
Chris Hemsworth,
right, sorry. And like at the beginning of the movie, he's giving Dana these book recommendations, he's engaging in these more critical discussions, and then when they get to the cabin, he goes like full jock, kind of changes his attitude and his personality, and even Marty calls him out on this. And he says the line, we should all stay together, right? Go room by room, lock all the doors. But, you know, they don't like that downstairs because you're right, that doesn't make a good horror movie, right? The horror movie trope is, you know, I'll be right back, right? So they're like, no, we should all split up. And again, Marty is questioning, what? He's supposed to be, you know, the stoner, the fool, whatever character he's playing. And the jock is making all these now, like, it's going back on everything that you should do in a horror movie, per se.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also had that scene written down as well, because when it cuts back to the facility, oh, what does he say? Oh, yeah, he goes, watch the master work, and then you see a pan, but also like a tracking shot following the mist, and they pump stupidity mist into Chris Hemsworth, and like, if that isn't satire, what is? The other thing, when Chris Hemsworth and the blonde, forgive me, I suck at character names.
Jules.
It's never been something I'm good at. Jules,
yeah.
When they go off to have sex in the woods and they cut back to this facility, they say, gotta keep the customer satisfied.
Yeah.
You understand what's at stake here.
Yeah.
And if that isn't meta, like filmmakers saying, we have to do this or else we're going to get bad ratings, we're going to get bad audience scores, we're going to flop, we're going to have to fire people off set, you know, like all this stuff. It's so funny. And this like intense scene of like the blood pouring down into the gears and like through the fountain, it looks like holy water. It literally looks like holy water.
True.
And it's filmed so seriously and it's so funny. It's like offering us like the bloodshed, which is so ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good way to look at that. But kind of going again off that desensitization lens too, like they play around a lot with the voyeurism. So, like, we're watching a horror movie play out, right? These kids are dying. These pretty, like, bloody deaths. Is a very gory movie. But there's the one scene where Dana's on the dock and one of the Buckner family members is, like, trying to beat her with, like, the bear trap things.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But they're having, like, in the office, they're having a full party about it, right?
Yeah.
Totally immune to the fact that she's getting her butt beat basically with this bear trap thing, whereas the rest of the movie they're like, oh, how's he gonna die, how's this gonna play out, and trying to like infiltrate it in a sense that they're like manipulating and they're playing that puppeteer role that Marty always alludes to. But that desensitization of like, we want to see what the customer wants to see, but then once it's, you know, oh, like, the movie's done, whatever, Dana's supposed to live, or if she dies, like, at least she's the last one type thing. They're totally not even paying attention to it.
Absolutely. There's another shot, too. I will put it up here. It's also want to cut back to the facility. Now, I do work in the film industry, so I have seen this a lot. And when they cut to these guys, I was laughing so hard. It's a shot, it's like two men kind of sitting how we're sitting, and they're watching like either their sex scene or just like the bloodiest thing ever, and they're just like this.
Deadpan.
So professional. And if you look at sets and how they're run, if you're filming like a killer scene or you're filming like a really horrendous beat up scene, there's guns blazing like on set, if you look at the director's chair or within the director's booth, they're watching the bloodiest thing, or like the like an actor screaming to death, and they're just like so calm. It's so funny how they were able to make those directors exactly like they felt like film directors to me.
Yeah,
they did.
Fair. Yeah, and I mean, like, that's a big part of this, right? Because they keep saying that this is for the gods, but like you can make the argument that the gods is us, the consumers. If we're not happy. And that's why I think this is such an interesting film. It's because of the critique of, these are the these are the traditional horror tropes that we're used to. Okay, what if we challenge that? What if we flip it on our head? What if these actors are making decisions that a normal person would maybe not make in these situations, like, let's run upstairs, and the killer's chasing you, that sort of thing, because they're actually being puppeteered by something else, or there's external factors influencing it, like we saw with the pheromones, with these people in headquarters changing different things to get the perfect shot.
Exactly, playing around with the tropes in that way. Another thing that was like brilliant, bringing out Sigourney Weaver as the final director.
I think it's different though too, again, if we watch Alien, and we can talk about that, like, that's one female in a cast of all males fighting an entire alien race.
Exactly.
So, like, that's a little bit, I guess, of a different situation than Babysitters, and, not discrediting any of Jamie Lee Curtis's work. Love her to death.
Yeah.
She's an amazing final girl. But it's just a little bit of a different setting, a little bit of a different environment where someone, I guess you could bring critical feminist theory into that too, as to why it's more profound that a female and all-male cast, such as Alien, would have done, some pretty cool things for the film industry.
Exactly. And if anyone wants to read more about the final girl, Carol Clover was the one that penned her book. It's a really long title and I forget it, but
good.
I'll find it. It is a book. It is a whole book about the final girl throughout the generations of film. That will be a thing that I will put in the description.
I guess we should also mention that we're sisters. So, like, we watch a lot of horror movies together.
True.
We have a lot of these, like, conversations together. And there's going to be a lot of crossover of things that we've seen that we're going to bring into different conversations. All right, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
That was all mine. My focus today was, like, some fun cultural stuff. I went through my little tropes that I wanted to talk about.
Well, let's talk actually more about those tropes and the archetypes, because that came up a lot in terms of like what I wanted to focus on. The horror archetypes, there's the different characters. So there's the whore, I guess to say it nicely, the athlete, the scholar, the fool, and the virgin, right? So we know that Julie would be that blonde, Sex in the Woods type girl. The athlete is Kurt. The scholar is Holden. The fool would be Marty, and the virgin is Dana. That's why Dana's supposed to live last. So it's interesting how these characters challenge these tropes, because like I said earlier, right, they don't initially start off as these characters, but they're molded into becoming these characters so they can fit those traditional roles.
The use of all the gas in each of the thing, like when they pump pheromone into it, the stupidity gas, like they're all meant, and every time it cuts back to the facility, they always have a comment like, oh, this won't work. Like even the we should split up scene.
Yeah.
Where Chris Hemsworth is like, no matter what happens, stay together, stupidity gas, we should split up now. And then all of a sudden he becomes the dumb jock. There's also the scene that's kind of funny where they just, like, they don't crash the RV and the tunnel blows up while they're on the RV, while they're in the RV, and they all get off and somebody mentions the word jump. And then all of a sudden Chris Hemsworth is like, absolutely, I'm going to do a motorcycle jump.
Yeah.
And that is also a nod to a lot of, like, horror movies. Yeah. Where if somebody says something beforehand, they'll just kind of take that and go with it.
Run with it, yeah.
So that's just, like, a funny little nod that I noticed as well.
Well, and maybe this is, like, my feminist critical lens coming into it, but the way that they play with the hero trope, too. Like, exactly in that same scene, right? He's like, don't worry guys, I'll send helicopters, I'll send the police after I make this jump, and like it's easy, I've done these like smaller jumps like this before. And then he like goes into the force field and crashes and dies, and you're like, okay, interesting, because clearly he's not supposed to be the hero of the movie. The hero of the movie is, I would say probably equal parts Dana, equal parts Marty, because they kind of go and like help each other to survive. But you're kind of getting this, like, challenging of the trope of what it means to be a hero in a horror movie.
Exactly, yeah. I would personally give credit to Marty, because he's the one that comes back, right?
True, yeah.
And I think that's funny because when is the stoner ever
That's true too.
the hero?
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Because especially if he's supposed to be the fool, right?
Exactly,
That's the
the
archetype.
fool.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
He's made for comic relief, which he provides,
Mhm.
but often he'll survive until humor is not needed anymore within the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And-
he goes through,
That's
a
okay.
little change because when they're in that like chamber at the end, that the fool is no longer really present in his character.
Yeah. But they were also saying, actually, the office guys were saying that because he was doing so much weed, he was immune to the gases.
Ah!
Right? So that's another, like, he was totally immune. So he was supposed to be this fool to be partaking in drugs and alcohol, but actually, in a sense, that kind of saved him in the end.
Exactly. So that's why his character is so interesting. I'm sure you could write a whole essay
Oh, for
just
sure.
on how that one character subverts all those traits.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess one more archetype I wanted to bring up was the actual place itself, right? They chose the cabin in the woods, right? And I'm sure people have seen, like, The Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, Blair Witch Project. Anything that happens in, like, a scary, isolated cabin is probably not going to be a good thing, you know?
I would say, yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of sets it up. They get there and they're like, wow, this is an abandoned cabin. How exciting. So that kind of brings me to the theory that I wanted to bring up, and that's the placelessness. So placelessness, I guess, can be best defined as an external condition brought about through cultural and global developments, as well as an internal response to personal or social detachments from a place. What that means, in the simplest terms, is there's a disconnect between the place, the physical place that you are in, and your internal perception of what that place should be, right? So places are how we construct meaning. So we are currently, filming this. So your place is you're seeing us on, a platform. So you're I guess trying to get some entertainment or some form of knowledge from this, right? Them going to the cabin, their meaning is we are going for a weekend vacation. So the cabin itself is supposed to be this setting of security, right? But when the Buckner family infiltrates that, it takes away that safety. Now it's supposed to, now it's this place that they're trying to get away from, right? It's no longer a safety place. It's no longer a place to keep the bad people out. It's a place where it's keeping the victims in.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. First thing that when they see that like two-way mirror, or even the first time they walk in and there's that portrait of like people murdering things and like animals ripping things apart, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering the portrait correctly, just that is already kind of taking away from a cabin that is supposed to be, like your weekend getaway.
Yeah.
And the other really interesting thing is that their way out to the elevators is through a tomb.
Yeah.
Through a tomb.
That's right.
where they can be saved. They're obviously not saved, but that's where they can escape the cabin, which is like an even worse thing to be in than the cabin.
True. Yeah, exactly. So I like the concept of the placelessness, right? Because this kind of ties into a broader theory of globalization, right? This movie is very American centralized, which is very obvious, right? When they're saying that, like, Japan's, they got their team and they're trying to, kill a bunch of 9-year-olds. They make that comment, and then they, like, flash to different places around the globe, and it's all these missions that are failed. And the one staff makes the comment, you want a good product, you have to buy American, right? So it's very much pushing the ideology of like, yes, in the global ranking system or in the global framework of success, you want to have the American product, which again, fully kind of comes into this whole concept of like this American place, right? You have this easily identifiable, unique identity being American.
Yeah, which is so funny because you're right, in the scene, when Japan, when they're defeating like a Ringu-like ghost,
Yeah.
they, holding hands, working together. And it's like, oh, the ghost is in this silly little frog now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, America's burning, right? Like,
Exactly. And we're not from America. We're from Canada, so it's interesting to kind of see how America is portrayed in movies, especially film, and especially a film that's very critical about itself.
Well, exactly, right? Like, this is an American film.
Yeah.
So they're kind of, in a way, still mocking their own country, right?
Kind of, yeah, in a sense. Kind of, I guess, ending on that note there, just the fact of, like, this is a critical movie, right? We're challenging what it means to be a traditional or modern horror movie with something like postmodernism. So postmodernism is basically a new artistic era with successor movements that are dependent on or revolt against those previous older modernist type ideologies. So this creates new technologies, new typologies, and it changes the world conditions. So in this movie, we can for sure see that, right, with the new technologies, the different pheromone sprays, the typologies, the archetypes that we see at play, and world conditions, right, like the American identity, how America kind of is represented and criticized in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that this would be a good representation of like a postmodernist film?
I would say yes, especially because it brings attention to its form and content. A lot of postmodern, even media in general, will do that. They'll call attention to its form, why it's being made, how it's being made, to comment on what modern, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
absolutely, this is postmodern. Anything that brings something new out of the old, right?
Yeah. And just one more thing that I wanted to add is, I don't know if you caught this, but at the very, very, very beginning of the movie, it shows those little snippets of like different sacrifice and different ancient rituals of punishment. Did you catch that? Right at the very beginning, it's like rolling credits, so it's depicting like worldwide human suffering and sacrifice, right? There's like clips of like Egyptian sacrifice, and it goes through like Aztec and like witch burnings. It happens in like the first like 10 to 15 seconds of the movie. I know, and it's really quick, and if you're not looking for it, you'll probably miss it. But I thought this was also interesting in terms of globalization, right? Because it kind of ties everything we talked about, right? The desensitization to horror and to basically murder, right? Because this has happened for such a long time, and then it places, like, this is not just an inherent thing to any culture. All cultures have practiced some form of sacrifice, or there has been some form of human suffering for the sake of the greater good.
Exactly.
In these, yeah.
That's really interesting. I should go back and watch it, because usually when I press play, I like get a snack, so I missed the first like 2 minutes.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Just saying.
Some things, one thing that I didn't get the chance to touch on would just be the concept of free will. That would be a whole other discussion. I think there's other movies that probably show that a little bit better, but I feel like that'd be a cool discussion to have later on.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do my fun facts?
Yes, show us our fun facts.
I have 3 fun facts for today.
Show us your fun facts.
Okay, so number 1, Sigourney Weaver wasn't the only final girl that worked on this film. Heather Langenkamp, she played Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I found out that her and her husband are actually, they do special effects makeup now.
Whoa,
And
that's cool.
Yeah, they did the special effects makeup in the movie. She's just credited under a different name.
Oh, cool. Oh, I love Nancy. Nightmare on Elm
awesome.
Street. Amazing.
Right? So there's 3 final girls in this movie, technically.
Wow, that's cool.
If you can believe it, Godard and Whedon, they wrote the screenplay in one single weekend over the course of 3 days.
Wow, that is cool.
An entire screenplay. That's hard to do in 3 days.
Didn't they do this as a side project to the Avengers too?
Oh, I don't know about that.
I thought I saw that written somewhere. They were doing something Avengers, excuse me, related. Okay, yeah.
I don't want to confirm that because I'm not sure if that's true, but that could be. You're right. And this one's for all you Twihard fans out there. So the woods where they filmed, it's outside of Vancouver here in Canada. They're the same woods that Twilight was filmed, and both the movies did their principal photography at the exact same time.
Oh, that's weird.
So there was 2 crews in the woods at one point doing principal photography, one for this film and one for Twilight.
I always forget how old and how young Twilight and the Cabin in the Woods are. That is so strange.
I think that's hilarious.
Could you make the argument that they happen in the same timeline?
No, because I think it was Whedon or Goddard, somebody was like, if you look off into the distance, you can like see Edward, and like in an interview, it's not true.
Yeah, no, that's
but
funny.
Twilight fans were like, you can see Edward in Cabin in the Woods. No, you can't.
I mean, you can see Jacob. Just kidding. There's a werewolf in one of the boxes. We can't confirm that it's Jacob. This is gonna be a Twilight channel. Oh no, don't clip this.
Oh my gosh, our next movie will be Twilight.
No. Let us know in the comments. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. We're not talking about Twilight.
The last segment, which we will also do weekly because we both love to read.
Love reading.
What sisters, am I right?
Yes.
I'm a fiction girl.
I love nonfiction. Sophia hates that I love nonfiction.
Disgusting. How can you sit there and read about everyday life when you live everyday life?
Yeah, because it's equally as scary.
Anyway, so we thought that this last segment could be, we recommend you books based off the movie that we have just talked about. And if you really loved the movie, then maybe you can like this book in another different type of media. I don't know.
There you go.
So the book that I have today, this is Horror Store by Grady Hendrix.
Ooh.
If you don't know what it's about, briefly, it's basically like a fake IKEA. And there's paranormal things that happen. I don't want to give too much away because it's actually hilarious, but you find out that it's like built on some sort of, or I think a serial killer killed a bunch of people before the store was built, and it's just like absolutely ridiculous. But the reason why I pulled this out is because similar to Cabin in the Woods, it makes a huge comment to both its form and content. First of all, it actually reads as like an IKEA handbook.
Oh,
like,
weird.
Literally, it has product details at the end of chapters, and as it goes on, like the products get weirder and weirder until it's like literally torture devices. Like, it's so ridiculous. So like Cabin in the Woods, it has very meta kind of situation. And then I also wrote, it's a contemporary haunting with social commentary about the realities of working retail and corporate views on the value of their employees. So, like I said, similar to Cabin in the Woods, form and content is commented on, while also talking about like tropes of retail, which is just hilarious to me. I love it.
Wow, okay. Also not sponsored, but if you want to sponsor us for books, we will read your books.
We will read your books.
We will read your books.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you for that. I do not have a book recommendation this week. Unfortunately, I read nonfiction, and I couldn't come up with one that really captured this really well. There is the original book, The Cabin in the Woods, that you can read. There's another book by Anna Reyes, Reyes, called The House in the Pines or something, and it's got the same vibes. They're making a TV show about it if you like that kind of stuff. But,
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'd watch that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on our very first Spirit Box session. This was so much fun, and we hope to come back. You can join us the first week of every month talking about our favorite horror movies. If you like what you see, there are different ways that you can support us. Number one, just be here. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. And if you want to support us and keep this going, you can also purchase a book from my Amazon wish list to support the next video.
Let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about next.
Thank you.
Bye!